C1. When it comes to explosion style, we have to talk about Deidara. Deidara's C1 technique is one of the most basic and versatile forms of explosive clay. Deidara's C1 technique is one of the most basic and versatile forms of explosive clay, created from one of the mouths on his palms. This technique is used frequently in battles, not only because of its flexibility, but also because it allows him to create various types of animals, each with its own unique characteristics and functions. The creatures formed from C1 are usually small, doll-like figures, such as birds, insects, snakes, and fish, each serving a different combat purpose. One of the most notable variations of C1 is the bird, which can fly through the air and is used by Deidara to attack opponents from above. This strategy helps to scatter and confuse his enemies, making it difficult for them to react in time. In his battle with Gaara, Deidara used C1 birds to attack from the sky, distracting Gaara and creating openings for more powerful attacks. He also frequently utilized C1 insects and spiders, especially in battles where surprise attacks were necessary. These creatures are highly mobile and can easily distract opponents, giving Deidara the time he needs to prepare stronger techniques, eaten from one of the mouths on his palms. This technique is used frequently in battles, not only because of its flexibility, but also because it allows him to create various types of animals, each with its own unique characteristics and functions. The creatures formed from C1 are usually small, doll-like figures. Additionally, C1 snakes and centipedes are also very useful in battle, especially for attacks from underground. They can move beneath the surface, surprising opponents when they emerge to attack or even bind the enemy. Fish and jellyfish, being aquatic creatures, are used by Deidara in underwater battles, leveraging their ability to move efficiently in water for effective attacks. Although C1 is not Deidara's strongest technique, its usefulness lies in its flexibility and diversity. The animals created with C1 typically don't cause significant damage, but are excellent at scattering and distracting opponents. This allows Deidara to prepare and deploy his more powerful C2 or C3 techniques, which require time to set up. In battle, C1 serves as an indirect strategy, setting the stage for Deidara to take control of the fight and put his opponents at a disadvantage. Now, we just want to take a moment to sincerely thank all of our viewers for supporting our channel. And we want you to know that we always read all of your comments and truly appreciate your suggestions and feedback. We are aiming to reach 10K subscribers, and we really need your help. Please support us by hitting the subscribe button, liking, and sharing our videos. Your support is our biggest motivation to keep growing and bringing you more exciting content. Alright, next. C2. C2 is more powerful and distinctive than C1. To use this technique, Deidara needs to use both hand mouths to create massive clay dragons. He can make a large clay dragon that can fly, and while riding on its back, the dragon has the ability to shoot smaller clay creatures, similar to homing missiles, to attack the enemy. These smaller creatures resemble miniature versions of the original dragon. Although they are much smaller, they are still large enough to inflict significant damage on a normal person. These clay creatures can track their targets and explode upon contact, causing a powerful blast with strength proportional to their size. When these small missile creatures are created, they consume a corresponding amount of clay from the large dragon, starting with its tail. This limits the number of clay missiles the C2 dragon can produce, and Deidara would need to sacrifice more important parts of the dragon, like its body or wings, if he wants to create more missiles. Additionally, the dragon can create clay mines in the form of small spherical creatures. These mines can be used to force the enemy into fighting within a confined space. This is achieved by Toby using the technique Earth Release, hiding like a mole, to bury the mines underground without the enemy knowing their exact location. When combined with the clay missiles, this strategy can create a restricted battlefield, forcing the opponent to move within a narrow area and eventually suffer from devastating explosions. This tactic is extremely dangerous when used flexibly, as it forces the opponent to face not only direct attacks, but also the challenge of being trapped by the clay mines. Deidara uses clay not just as a weapon for attack, but also as a tool to control the battlefield. A powerful move that Deidara used to deal with Sasuke. To escape the clay mines, Sasuke activated his Cursed Seal Level 2 to enhance his strength and speed. He jumped high and used his sword to cut off the wings of the clay dragon, causing it to crash to the ground and trigger the clay mines. This resulted in a massive explosion, but Sasuke managed to escape the blast zone just in time by using his speed and quick mobility. C3. Deidara's C3 technique is one of the most powerful and destructive moves in his arsenal. C3 creates a massive clay statue, usually in the shape of a human or a large creature. When activated, this statue is dropped from above onto the target and explodes with enough force to obliterate an entire village in an instant. This makes C3 an incredibly fearsome and devastating technique. Deidara used C3 during his battle with Gaara in the Sand Village. When he dropped the massive clay statue from the sky, Gaara was forced to use nearly all his strength to protect the village. He created a huge sand shield to block the explosion from C3, saving the village from destruction. Although Gaara successfully stopped the blast, it severely drained his energy, making it difficult for him to fight back against Deidara, ultimately allowing Deidara to capture him. While C3 doesn't have as many variations as Deidara's other techniques, its overwhelming power and destructive scale make it a truly terrifying move. C4. Deidara's C4 technique, also known as C4 Garuda, is one of the most powerful and terrifying moves in his arsenal. Unlike his previous techniques, C4 doesn't just create clay animals or shapes to attack. It's a technique capable of destruction at the cellular level. To perform C4, Deidara uses his own mouth instead of the mouths on his hands. He creates a giant clay statue resembling himself. When this statue explodes, it doesn't produce a large, visible explosion like his other techniques. Instead, it releases an invisible cloud of microbombs. These microbombs can enter the bloodstream of anyone or anything that inhales them. And once Deidara activates them, they explode, causing destruction at the cellular level, reducing the victim to dust. Deidara used the C4 technique twice during his battle with Sasuke Uchiha, showcasing one of his cleverest strategic moves. Realizing that Sasuke's Sharingan could see and evade typical attacks, Deidara chose to use C4 to create an unavoidable assault. However, Sasuke was very smart. The first time, using his Sharingan, he detected the presence of the microbombs and their range. He avoided inhaling them by holding his breath and moving toward Deidara. The second time, when he couldn't avoid breathing in the microbombs, he used Chidori on himself to neutralize them, even though this move caused him serious injury. Therefore, while C4 is a terrifying technique, it doesn't always guarantee victory, especially against an opponent who can recognize and counter it. C4 is frightening not because of its raw power, but because of how difficult it is to deal with. It puts opponents in a tough situation, making them fight without knowing exactly what they're facing. Unfortunately for Deidara, he went up against someone with exceptionally powerful eyes. Zero. Deidara's most powerful explosive technique, is known as his ultimate art. It has the nature of absolute destruction, and we can consider it Deidara's suicide bombing technique. When preparing to use this technique, Deidara opens a large mouth on his chest, an area that has been stitched shut. He begins to insert a massive amount of clay into this mouth. What's notable here is that the mouth on Deidara's chest is not just a normal organ. It is directly connected to his heart. When this technique is activated, a massive amount of chakra is gathered directly from the body's channels, constantly being molded until it explodes. In the anime, we can see the intricate and glowing chakra network inside him. Ultimately, Deidara himself becomes a bomb with immense energy, causing a terrifying explosion with a blast radius of up to 10 kilometers, enough to destroy anything within this range. Deidara used this technique in his battle against Sasuke Uchiha. Realizing he couldn't defeat Sasuke with regular techniques, Deidara decided to use C0 as a last resort to destroy his opponent. Theoretically, death was almost unavoidable. However, Sasuke summoned Manda, hid inside its mouth, and used a teleportation technique to escape the explosion. And after all, Manda died, but Sasuke survived. This technique truly reflects Deidara's ego and his philosophy of art. Art is an explosion, a brief moment full of power and impact. It is not something that lasts forever, but a beautiful moment that disappears afterward. Suicide bombing clone. This technique is somewhat similar to C0. It starts with creating a shadow clone, which then swallows explosive clay and detonates itself, causing a large explosion designed to distract the opponent. When the clone self-destructs, the loud explosion not only creates a thick cloud of smoke, but also grabs the enemy's full attention, making them focus entirely on the blast. During this moment, the user takes advantage of the distraction to escape. With this suicidal bombing act, the opponent is not only put under extreme tension, but also distracted by the threat of the explosion. Their heightened vigilance becomes an advantage for the user, creating an opening to execute further strategic moves. This technique requires Deidara to be skillful in using deceptive art, making the enemy believe that the clone is the real Deidara committing a suicidal attack. This deception is key to the technique's success. The explosion from the clone is powerful enough to destroy an entire section of a forest, making this technique extremely dangerous. Deidara used this technique during his battle with Team 7 and Team 10, forcing Kakashi to use Kamui to teleport the explosion to another dimension. Explosion Release. Landmine Fist. Explosion Release. Landmine Fist is a powerful combination technique of explosion release and taijutsu used by Gaara. This technique allows the user to create a powerful explosion inside the opponent's body after making direct contact with a simple punch. Don't be fooled by the simplicity of the punch, because once the explosion is triggered, it's strong enough to blow up the opponent, no matter how big or strong they are compared to the user. The true danger of this technique lies in its ability to not only deal physical damage, but also overwhelm the opponent psychologically. During the Fourth Great Ninja War, Gaara demonstrated the terrifying power of Landmine Fist against the allied shinobi forces. Seeing someone explode right in front of them is truly horrifying, and knowing that a single punch could lead to certain death creates immense fear and distraction, giving the user a significant psychological advantage. Blast Sword Technique. Blasting Bridle. Repeating Death. Blast Sword Technique. Blasting Bridle. Repeating Death is a terrifying technique used by Jinpachi Munashi, one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist. This technique relies on the Shibuki sword to create massive explosions, causing widespread destruction in battles. Jinpachi uses a special scroll filled with explosive tags, which are securely attached to the Shibuki sword. When deploying this technique, he unrolls the scroll and wraps it around the battlefield, creating a deadly circle that is nearly impossible for opponents to escape. After setting it up, Jinpachi activates the explosive tags, triggering a series of chain explosions that cover the entire area in fire and overwhelming pressure. Anyone trapped inside this circle has almost no chance of survival, as the force of the explosions is enough to cause severe damage or even complete annihilation. This technique was used by Jinpachi during the Fourth Great Ninja War when facing the allied shinobi forces. Blast Sword Technique. Blasting Bridle. Repeating Death not only created chaos, but also caused significant damage to the enemy's formation. The use of explosive tags created immense psychological pressure on the opponents, making them fearful and unable to focus. Fire Release. Exploding Flame Formation. Fire Release. Exploding Flame Formation is a rather terrifying technique used by Hanzo, one of the legendary ninjas of the Hidden Rain Village. This technique combines fire release with explosive tags, creating a force strong enough to easily obliterate any unfortunate opponent. Hanzo deploys this technique with great precision. He hides the explosive tags, which are integrated with fire release, underground, setting up a perfect trap. When the target accidentally steps into the prepared area, Hanzo slams his hands into the ground, activating the explosive tags. These tags quickly move towards the target, wrapping tightly around them from their feet upwards, like snakes. Then, all the explosive tags detonate simultaneously, enough to destroy the earth and stone, engulfing the target in intense flames. Hanzo used this technique when facing Nagato, Pain. Although Nagato managed to avoid death, he couldn't completely escape the power of the explosion. He was severely injured in the leg, leaving permanent scars that significantly limited his movement. This technique is not only powerful, but also very difficult to counter. The most dangerous part is that opponents often do not realize the presence of the explosive tags until it's too late. Paper Person of God Technique. The Paper Person of God technique is one of the most destructive techniques used by Conan, a member of the Akatsuki organization. This technique is not just a typical explosive move, it's a display of incredible power. Conan uses a massive amount of up to 600 billion explosive tags, disguising them as the surrounding landscape like earth or water. The sophistication of this camouflage is such that even the Sharingan, the eyes with the most detailed observation and analysis abilities, cannot detect that an ocean in front of them is actually filled with explosive tags. When the target falls into the trap, Conan manipulates the landscape to split apart, creating a vast chasm beneath the target's feet. With no ground to stand on, the opponent falls and is immediately covered by the explosive tags. These 600 billion explosive tags are designed to explode consecutively for 10 minutes, surpassing the 5-minute limit of untouchable abilities that Obito Uchiha possesses. This was the critical point in the battle between Conan and Obito. Conan had calculated everything so that Obito wouldn't have a chance to dodge and would be forced to take the full blast. However, there was one thing she couldn't account for: the forbidden technique of manipulating reality, Izanagi. Obito was forced to use Izanagi, sacrificing one of his eyes to escape from Conan's sea of explosive tags. Mutually multiplying explosive tags. Mutually multiplying explosive tags is an extremely dangerous technique, created and perfected by the second Hokage of the Hidden Leaf Village, Tobirama Senju. This is one of the most destructive explosive techniques, capable of creating a nearly endless chain reaction of explosions, making it a terrifying threat to anyone who faces it. The process of deploying this technique is quite complex. The user, especially those who have been resurrected, uses their own body as the foundation to create special explosive tags. These tags are then attached to the opponent or a specific target. When they explode, the blast not only causes immediate damage, but also generates new explosive tags from the initial explosion. This process repeats continuously, creating an uncontrollable chain of explosions that persists until the target is completely destroyed. This technique can be used in many different situations, from individual battles to large-scale wars. It is especially effective in areas with many obstacles or complex terrain, where consecutive explosions can cause chaos and massive damage, wiping out anyone caught in the chain reaction of blasts. In general, the more the technique explodes, the more chakra it consumes, making it extremely dangerous for normal users. However, as you know, those resurrected through Edo Tensei are practically immortal with an infinite chakra supply, making this jutsu perfect for exploiting that strength. It's a very clever combination. In the battle against Obito Uchiha Tobirama, who was resurrected through Edo Tensei, used mutually multiplying explosive tags to attack Obito. During that time, Hashirama did not allow anyone to approach the explosion zone. Alright, that's all for this episode. If you want me to make a video about any other topic or a specific character, just leave a comment below.